Welcome to OverBoost 36. OverBoost is a podcast interview series featuring discussions with speedrunners about their history in speedrunning and gaming and the runs they're passionate about. I am your host, PMC Trilogy, and with me today is rythin. rythin, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, I do want to confirm up front, because I think I asked you this before, like once in some stream. Is rythin, like similar to rhythm, the preferred pronunciation?
Yes, that is the pronunciation I had in mind when I came up with this. But everyone says rythin. It's whatever. I don't mind.
Yeah, no, I got you. Of course, in preparation for the interview, I had watched a few, GDQ VODs, Frost Fatales, and I'd heard hosts say that, and I was like, oh my god, did I get it wrong? But I figured maybe at the beginning of the pod it would be useful to include that and to sort of push that there. Now, I did mention, of course, AGDQ. Now, recently, you had the opportunity to speedrun Sammy Suricate in Lionland at AGDQ 2021. And I kind of wanted to ask a few questions on the top about just sort of doing the awful block thing. When you submit a game like Sammy Suricate, or do you have thoughts about game choice when it comes to what you're submitting to GDQ? And do you feel that you're angling to be in awful block?
I definitely did do that for a while with the bigger marathons with GDQ and with ESA. Or I guess less with GDQ, because this is like the first time I actually submitted, because it was online.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have to fly all the way to America, so that helped. But yeah, for a while I did sort of try to promote myself on the awful games and being the awful block person. I guess a bunch of the Polish marathon people can confirm that a bunch of my first appearances have been just that. As time has gone on, I sort of started picking up more, I guess, well recognized and well regarded games, and submitting those as well. So, I guess not anymore, but Sammy was definitely angled at the awful block. So yeah.
And when it comes to doing that, what do you people are probably not going to know a lot of these awful block games. That's sort of part of the fun of it, right? If you're a viewer, you're not sure exactly what you're going to be getting. Did you have expectations for what the response might be to Sammy Suricate? And did you have any particular favorite reactions to the game that you'd want to share?
So I did sort of expect it to get in. I didn't expect it to be my only game that gets in. Mm-hmm. I figured if I was going to get something in, it would be Sammy and something else, or nothing at all. And I was only expecting that because it had a really positive response at Fleet Fatales. So I was kind of expecting someone to, recommend this because, people loved it. And I'm really happy that people did, both during Fleet Fatales and during GDQ, because I couldn't have expected that, honestly. Having ran the game for a couple months, I'm sort of biased towards thinking that the run isn't as cool as it used to be, because new glitches were found, and the run has sort of, from the execution side, I would say it's become more boring. But I suppose, going through every wall in the game is entertaining to watch. So, yeah. I don't think I really had a favorite reaction. I didn't really catch any specific ones that stood out, I don't think. There were a couple funny comments on the YouTube upload of the VODs and stuff, but nothing that particularly stood out.
Okay. And then one more GDQ question. As we get into this interview, I think we're going to discover that you have I'm really interested by the wide cross section, because I feel like the games, when I looked at your speedrun.com page, and also the games that we had discussed in terms of ones to highlight for this interview, there's some commonalities, but also there's a wide range. I mean, 3D platformers, first-person shooters, a bunch of different developers. An interesting cross-section of games. Do you have any hopes? Let's say right now, I don't want to. I'm not GDQ staff, but my thoughts, being in America, is that SGDQ 2021 is probably going to be online, right? Like, let's just say it. Do you have any thoughts on what you would like to see? What game you're like, if I could get one game in the SGDQ 2020 online, what would it be?
Probably KO 2, just because it's like the one run of mine that I can see myself doing still at this moment, and it's of a decent length. Because like my games are usually like in the 10-20 minute range, which is fine for like if you're doing attempts and like doing runs. It's nice to have a quick and short run, but for a marathon showing, I would like a longer run. So around an hour like would be nice. So I get to get some stage time, get to show off a game I like, and hopefully entertain people. Not to mention, obviously, raising money for charity.
Of course, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, I definitely hear you, because, I mean, short runs, I think, are just as you said, sort of very manageable in terms of time, but in terms of a marathon, if your run is as long as the tech switch, that can kind of feel like, well, what were we doing? So, having a longer run definitely makes sense in that way. Well, let's go back in time then. Let's go back to, where does gaming start for you? What are your first experiences with gaming?
First experiences, like the first thing I really remember is watching my dad play Far Cry 1 on my parents' PC, and I used to think that was really cool. And I think at some point my parents got a new PC, so I got the old one, and I played a lot of Flash games, like online and stuff. Didn't really, because my parents were not into gaming at all, still aren't. They sort of know I do, like, playing the games with a timer. Whoa, I don't really care. So I never got any games. So I was just stuck with like Flash games and whatever I found online for free. So a lot of the time it was just like random Flash, whatever. At some point I learned how to pirate games, but don't tell anyone.
Yeah, Twitch, don't pay attention to this part.
Yeah, I feel like everyone, like any younger people who are growing up gaming, started out with that because you had no money to buy stuff and your parents didn't buy you stuff, so how are you gonna do anything? But yeah, so I don't remember what I played first, like my first PC game. I think I remember in my early years, like when I was starting out with video games, I played Prince of Persia, Sons of Time, and none of the other ones. I played Tomb Raider, not the classics, but the ones after, so Legend and Anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
I never played Underworld. I got the game, I still have it on my shelf. My PC back then couldn't run it. So, yeah. So I played those. And I think at some point I got a PlayStation 3, and I specifically remember Uncharted 2 and Infamous were like the two games I played a lot and really loved. But I had a really bad setup. I remember this specifically. I had a really bad setup with the PlayStation 3, where my TV had like almost a second of input lag. So I played a lot, like with it, but after some time I just went back to the PC because it was better to play, especially after I figured out how to use a controller on the PC. That was like, whew, living the life.
That's useful. Now, I wanted to ask, Flash games, I feel like reminiscing on Flash games is a hot internet content thing at the moment, just because of the retirement of Flash. Do you remember any particular games that you would share as like, because I think this is the way that people often talk about that experience with Flash games, is they had like the Flash game that they played with their friends, or something along those lines. Do you remember any particular games that you would want to share?
So I played it a lot on like Nitro. I think that's how it's pronounced. I specifically remember the like 2-player game with like 2 angel cats that you would like shoot arrows into walls and then use those as platforms. That's one I remember. I don't think I ever got very far in it, but I just remember it. Any other ones? Fireboy and Water Girl. Played that one a lot. Yeah, I don't know if I remember any other ones.
No, I mean it's probably a while ago. Did you?
Yeah, it's been forever.
Have you revisited any of these? I mean, yes.
No.
If of course Flash, lots of people are doing projects to preserve Flash or emulate Flash. So just the retirement from browsers is more of I think an opportunity to again reminisce and spur interest. I'm just curious because I feel like some people too. Like I noticed some folks ended up returning to Flash games. I also wanted to ask, like, had you gone back to any of these Flash games recently?
Recently, no.
Oh, okay.
But I did run one Flash game a couple years ago. That was like one of my early speed games. I don't know if you want me to like talk about this now or.
Oh, which game is it? It's
Mercurial Story. Which,
yeah. Go ahead, mention that. Yeah.
I'm sure no one's heard of that. I think the reason I ran it was I was in secondary school at the time, and I was really bored most of the time, and I found that game on the App Store, in the mobile store, and like I played it through once. I messed around and like found a couple skips. I was like, are there leaderboards for this? Yeah, there are, and it's like everyone's on the mobile playing it, but they had like a web version. So I just went on the web version and took the record because it was just easier to control.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. That definitely makes sense. So you already mentioned the, you had experience with the hand-me-down computer, with the PS3. Was there, is there a certain point where you feel like you kind of took ownership of the gaming hobby? Like, did you later, maybe save up money and buy your own computer, more recently or something like that? Because I feel like this is always a question I like to ask, is because at some point, a lot of people start out like gaming is a hand-me-down thing, or a thing where, at a Christmas or something, you get a gift. And then at some point it's like, all right, well, now this is how I'm going to spend money as a hobby that I'm going to, dedicate my time to. Do you feel like there's a certain, could you track a certain point for that?
I guess somewhere around the end of middle school. I never bought my own PC because I don't know. I just haven't really ever done much in terms of like a job and earning my own money. So I never had really enough to save up for a PC. But I did buy like a bunch of like all my peripherals I bought with my own money. So I guess in a way I would say that that's sort of me. Like you said, taking ownership and doing something by myself for myself with regards to the hobby. I couldn't tell you like how old I was exactly, but
no, sometimes it definitely is like that, because I feel like sometimes you want to be in a hobby. Like I feel like for the way you described it reminds me a lot of music for me. Where there wasn't a chance in hell I was going to buy my own piano. That's not going to happen as a child. But, I end up buying music books, buying other things, maybe at some point being in charge of music lessons. So I definitely think that makes sense and follows. So our focus is going to be speedrunning for most of this interview. But I always like to check in and ask about multiplayer gaming, because most of the speedruns are single-player games as opposed to multiplayer. And I wanted to ask if you had any big phases with any kind of multiplayer, whether that be, local multiplayer or MMOs or MOBAs or any kind of thing like that?
So I could never stand like most multiplayer games. I never got into like competitive shooters. I hate MOBAs. I hate MMOs. They're just, that gameplay is not for me. But I did have like a year or two where I played Overwatch with a couple of friends a lot. So I have like, I don't know, 400 or 500 hours on that game. And that is, to this day, I think the only time I've played a multiplayer game for like more than a day without getting bored.
Was that right around when Overwatch started, or was it more deeper into the life of that game?
I think it was like half a year or a year into, like, since it released. I know I got into it on like the first free weekend they did. Because back then I was still on a complete toaster of a PC, and I didn't get it. Like, my friends have been playing it for like since release basically, but I never got it because I just assumed like there's no way it's gonna work. No chance. But they had the free weekend, so I decided to like try it out, like whatever. It's probably not even gonna start up, but I might as well check it out. And it ran at like 20 to 40 FPS. I was like, yeah, that's good enough. Yeah. That's good enough. So yeah, I played it for a while with that. Then actually a friend from England ended up shipping to me his old graphics card, his 750 Ti. So I got to like 50 FPS on that. And yeah, for a while. I don't think I played it again since my most recent upgrade. So yeah, that's about the performance I was getting. And I wasn't very good at the game, but it was fun.
Did you have any preferred classes to play?
I was always a support player. For like 90% of my playtime. I think I sort of started playing more DPS just because I got bored of playing healer. So yeah, I did a bit of that. I was an okay Mei, I think. That's about it.
That's reasonable. I definitely, I think I also had a similar experience in which I played it probably for maybe a few hundred hours and then rage quit furiously. I think I once uninstalled Overwatch and then immediately uninstalled Battle.net after, and I don't think I've ever returned to the game since then. Sometimes it's like that.
Nice.
Well, let's talk about something that's obviously not frustrating at all, which is speedrunning. When did you first learn about speedrunning?
I don't really know when I first learned about it. I feel like it's something that I've always known existed. I'm not sure why. The first memory I have of speedrunning is a friend of mine from elementary school who was practicing a boss cheese for the Capra demon in Dark Souls. We've had Kata on here before, so I'm sure you know all about Dark Souls. Yeah, and so I remember him specifically mentioning that like this is a speedrun strat. And I guess I must have done some investigating on my own because I definitely didn't like ask him about it. But yeah, so since then I sort of knew about speedrunning. I wasn't really super interested. I just knew it existed. And then in 2013, I think it was AGDQ or SGDQ, 2013 had Breakdown do a speedrun of Super Meat Boy 106% on the Xbox, I think 360, in like 3 hours or something. It was really long. But I watched that whole run like 5 times over. I just really loved that. And yeah, I started running Meat Boy like soon after that. I never really interacted with any communities until around 2016, just because I didn't know English at the time. I didn't know it at least well enough to confidently like communicate. But yeah, I've been like running on and off since 2013. Pretty sure like I did some runs for like a year or two, and then in 2016 I sort of met a friend group basically, and one of the people there did speedrunning, so they sort of got me back into it. And yeah, I'd say I've been speedrunning pretty actively since 2016.
So now, just to confirm, that Super Meat Boy ended up being your first game that you completed a speedrun of? Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Now, at what point, so when you were speedrunning initially, were you just doing runs and recording them for yourself? Were you even recording them? Were you streaming them? Like, at what point, because I find it interesting, you know, just because you're speedrunning doesn't mean you're recording them or you are streaming them. What was that progression like for you?
So at first, I was doing Meat Boy runs with a, those like digital clocks that you like hand watches, whatever they're called. Mine had a timer, so I timed my runs with that. Yeah, of course, I didn't even know how to record stuff. So yeah, no recordings of that. But I do remember I had like a mid 3x any percentile, like 35 or whatever, on my stopwatch, which honestly I might have not even been timing with the correct like rules. I don't know, but I remember that was like a time I had at one point, and I'm pretty sure I did that for like 2 years. Yeah, I don't think I learned what a life split is until getting back into it in 2016.
And then at that point, would you have just focused on PC runs? Because I feel like, you know, PC runs with OBS in the later half of the 2010s are like, I want to say somewhat straightforward to capture. I know you play some older games and the capture situation can be complicated with older PC games. But like certainly, you know, for someone coming to it new, it's going to be more straightforward than capture hardware, you know, which is its own nest. Were you just doing PC runs at that time that you had been recording, or were you messing with capture hardware?
Yeah, at that time I was already like done with the PlayStation. I was just on PC. So honestly, like the thought of speedrunning a console game hasn't really come up until like 2018, 17, 18. I was like all PC.
What console game came up in around then that you thought about recording?
So at that point I recently like reset up my PS3. I don't remember why, but I did. I think it was like to mod it or something. And I noticed that I had a Ratchet and Clank game, like a CD of it, and I was like, hey, this game is pretty cool. And I know Ratchet runs are pretty nice, so maybe I should like look into that. And then I did, and I learned like the first 2 minutes, and I came up to the first out of bounds, and it was too hard. So it was a short-lived adventure.
That's fair. Sometimes it's like that. I know I had an experience where I was like, I'm gonna learn Titanfall 2, and then I got to like the first hard jumping thing, skip, and I was like, not sure about this one. So let's do some speedrun game takes. Of all the speedruns that you've done, what is your favorite speedrun?
Hard to say. I've done, as you've seen on my profile, I've done a lot of them. There's a bunch I never uploaded as well. It's hard for me to pick like the top favorite one. I have like a couple contenders, so I'm just gonna cheat and answer multiple. First of all, Super Meat Boy. It's my favorite game of all time, and I love the run. It's frustrating to grind, but it's still a lot of fun, and I really love the game, so that's one for sure. Mortyr IV. It's it's the game that sort of got me into glitch hunting and routing. And it was the first game that like I've really started a community. I mean, not really anyone who runs it at this point, but I got a couple people into it, and I think I did a pretty solid job of routing it, finding like most of the skips that are still used to this day. So yeah, I guess like some nostalgia for it, and some, just pride in the route. And I think it's a pretty fun run overall.
I will mention, I try not to insert myself in interviews too much, but rythin did submit Mortyr IV to the Obscure Speedruns Club, and I did run it the month it was a game, and I had fun. It's a cool little, if you want like a 15-20 minute Lift Tech Jupiter speedrun, you'd be hard pressed to do better than Mortyr IV. It was a good time.
Yeah. So after that, like I guess going in like chronological order would be Noid 2, which is a game I stumbled upon because I was in a stream and the streamer had song requests, and they were just putting in their own requests just to not have like an offline playlist, and they had the title of the game in their clipboard instead of oh, there they are in chat. Nice. Yeah, they had the title of the game in their clipboard instead of a link.
Mm-hmm.
So they pasted it, and I was like, what is this? I am going to Google. So I looked it up. Oh, it's a game. Does it have a speedrun? I look it up on speedrun.com. Sure does. Oh, this game looks actually fun. I'm gonna play it. And then I did. And then I ran it. And then I ran it some more. And I spent like a couple years running it on and off. So yeah, that was like probably the most random way to stumble upon a speed game. But yeah, I think it's really fun. Even though it's like it's a game jam game that was made in a month. So it doesn't have a lot of content. But what is there is pretty fun. And I really do like the game. The tech is also really fun, so it was just a good time overall. And I guess the final one would be KO2, which for a lot of Polish people, it's like a childhood classic. For me, it was the complete opposite. I didn't really know the game existed for like until recently. Like, I always knew something KO, right? But never looked into it. So when I did, I hated the game. I played it casually and I hated it. I thought it was awful. It was really boring. The levels were like not very interesting to do platforming in. But I was in the KO speedrunning community from a different KO game that I picked up a couple months prior. And so I sort of like promised, I guess, that I would learn it and do a run. And I ended up doing that, and I ended up actually really enjoying the speedrun. Yeah, like for me, it took a very mediocre, bland, casual game to a really fun speedrun. So yeah, that's, I guess, the top 4.
No, I mean, that's fair. That's also, these are the 4 games, of course, that I watched VODs of. Oh, no, no, that's not correct, because I didn't watch a VOD of Super Meat Boy. I watched a VOD of Sammy Suricate. But, Sammy Suricate, Super Meat Boy, I can't tell the difference, right?
Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. All right, what about the flip side of it, though? Of all the speedruns you've done, what is your least favorite that you've completed a run of?
I'm actually gonna have to look at my profile for that.
I feel like I should have like a board that I can scratch down every time this happens, because this is usually what happens when I ask this question. Is like, I need to pull up my profile here. Wait a second.
Least favorite. All right, I've got a couple. So, first of all, KO1. That game sucks. It's awful. And the run is like, you just jump forward. That's the whole run. You jump forward. That one sucks. I did runs of the two like latest Red Faction games.
Mm-hmm.
So Guerrilla and Armageddon. Guerrilla is a really good game. I love that. As a run, it's cool, but I personally hate it. I can't stand doing it. It's fun to watch, but I can't do it. And Armageddon as a run just... No. I don't want to talk about it. Sucks. Yeah, I guess there's like a bunch of like games I didn't really enjoy, didn't mind. Those are the ones that I like particularly hated.
No, that's a pretty fair selection. What about a game that you would like to speedrun, but you have not gotten around to it, either, you know, for time reasons or it just doesn't fit with what you're doing right now?
I also have a lot of those.
Well, feel free to list a few.
So, I mentioned earlier that one of my first games that I've ever played was Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. And I would really like to get into that game and run it at some point. I'm pretty sure I bought the game like twice already, and I do not know where either copy is, so I would have to get it again. But yeah, that's probably one that's like the most obvious one right away to me. I just like haven't gotten around to it. I don't know. I didn't have like, I guess, motivation to try to learn it. Another one would be Dark Souls. I've been in the Speed Souls community for like years now, and I've still never like properly learned the game. So I just feel like it's long overdue to actually get into it. Yeah.
No, that's a really good answer. I definitely have some of those too, where I love so many people in the Metal Gear Solid community, and I just never actually do a run. And sometimes it's like that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just like you enjoy a crowd. One more question in the speedrun takes category. Favorite runs to watch that you do not run yourself and have no plans to run?
Any movement FPS, Half-Life 2, Quake, Titanfall 2, Valley, what's the other one? Lemma. Those are like the two sort of more obscure movement FPSs that I really like watching. Yeah, movement FPS is so hard. I do not have like the motivation to play a movement FPS enough to get any good at it. So I don't see myself running them ever, but they're so fun to watch.
No, I definitely agree there. I've experienced both parts of that. So here's another question. You know, speedrunning is pretty intensive, but you're also often sitting for long periods of time. So I like to ask each guest, do you have any sort of approaches when it comes to maintaining good health, both in regards to wear and tear on wrists and hands, and also, you know, usually sitting when streaming and playing the game?
So I'm awful at that. I'm like really bad. My back hurts so much because I do not know how to sit properly. I do some wrist like stretches and stuff when I remember. So not very often, but like there's my token of hey, I tried.
Understandable. I mean, it's sometimes too, right? It's like you handle things as they're needed. I think the takeaway when I ask this question, sometimes, you know, you have folks who are experiencing some kind of repetitive stress injury that they need to deal with, or, you know, people who really are fortunate to not have to deal with it. And I think the takeaway from everyone, though, is, of course, you know, listen to your body. If something's painful, you know, make sure to address it. In terms of other speedrunning questions, already, without even, you know, deep diving on any specific game, I think it's become apparent that you've filled a bunch of different roles in different games, and you talked about, you know, the experience of routing Mortyr 4, but also of other games, and you're really just kind of coming to them and doing attempts, just grinding out attempts for, platformers, 2D platformers, 3D platformers. When it comes to speedrunning, do you feel like you have a particular mission statement, or do you otherwise, feel like you're in a particular role?
So I guess like a mix of two of them. For a good while, I saw myself as like basically exclusively a glitch hunter. I didn't really enjoy grinding out runs, other than those 4 games that I mentioned. Those are like the exceptions where I actually liked doing runs and shaving off those seconds. But other than that, a lot of my time with speedrunning has been focusing on trying to find skips, glitches, and general optimizations to a game. And I still do to this day, try to find stuff. But also in the last year or so, I've sort of got a little more interested in coding, programming. And I actually had a friend teach me how to write an autosplitter and a load remover. So I feel like that's also a thing I've been doing for a bunch of communities, just making other speedrunning tools to be able to have fair competition, to be able to practice better, stuff like that, sort of more on the technical side.
That's really important labor. I'm being a person who mostly does obscure games, or sometimes does. I'm used to just having to live that manual split RTA life. But the ability to have it split for you, remove loads, that kind of thing, that's just really good. And I'm always happy to highlight someone who contributes that way, because it is important.
Yeah, you get spoiled by that. Once I learned how to make them, I did not run a single game that didn't have one. If it didn't have one, I made it myself, just for myself, because I do not want to split manually ever again.
All right, so I should have asked this before asking the health question, but I know that you mentioned earlier, getting controller working on PC, using a PS3 for some things. It's my assumption that, most often when people are doing platformers, they're usually doing them with controllers. I wanted to ask if you had any controller hot takes in regards to favorite or least favorite controllers.
Yeah, sure. So for platformers, my favorite controller is the keyboard.
Oh, okay, so you do keyboard. All right. Well, it shows what I know.
Yeah, I am a keyboard warrior all the way through. There's only one type of game I'll use a controller for, and that is specifically 3D platformers that do not have mouse control or camera control on the mouse.
Mm-hmm.
In those cases, I need a controller to be able to do anything. But other than that, I'd always choose keyboard or keyboard and mouse. It's just so much nicer.
That's interesting. So, of the games that I watched, I'm going to guess here, something like Noid, does that have mouse support where something KO Kangaroo 2 doesn't? Or go ahead.
Yeah, KO do not. Okay. KO games do not have mouse control. They're pretty old games, so yeah. But Noid has good control, so I run that on keyboard and mouse.
Okay. All right, that's interesting to know. Then I was wondering very much about that. All right, well let's dive into some specific games. Now, some of these you already talked about a bit. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about Sammy Suricate in Lionland. First off, for people who don't know, what is this game?
I don't know. It's like a old janky sort of shovelware platformer puzzle thing with tank controls and
tank controls. The 3D platformer of tank controls. Bless.
Yeah, of course. So apparently it was pretty popular in Poland. I never got sick with it, but there was a couple people in the Polish speedrunning Discord that I guess sort of rediscovered it, and I guess just started messing around. found out it was really broken. And you know me, I hear broken game, get me on that. So I did after a while. Like they figured out a lot of stuff before I joined. Like I helped figure out some skips and glitches and stuff.
Which do you know which ones did you contribute to? Did they show up in the AGDQ run or?
Yeah, the main clipping method I found.
Oh,
The one that was on every level.
That's the music one, right? Can you talk about that one?
There's a lot of music clips actually.
Okay, no, there's honestly I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure how uniform those clipping methods were. You know, in terms of where it was always the same way or not.
Like basically every method of clipping almost is related to lagging the game. So, but yeah, so I guess a bit of history with the game. So we figured out that getting into collision just puts you on top of it. I think Martin's in the chat actually figured that out with doors that like he made them close on you. So we knew that pretty early on. And we had some levels skipped like entirely with that. But you still played a lot of the game as intended. I think at one point I brought the game up to Albert. You know Albert.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually found an earlier patch of it, which at first we didn't think was very useful, because the only like difference that we noticed was there was one rock in a level that wasn't there in the later patch. So that level was technically a little faster because you could climb that rock and get to the end. But then we figured out that part was horribly broken, but that's later. Mm-hmm. So one specific glitch called the camera zip, I helped figure out, or maybe did figure out, partially at least. So there was one level that had a perfect setup that if you just at the start walk backwards and jump into a wall, you clip through it. Or like you technically clip into it and then get zipped up, but everyone was just holding back, so we thought you just clipped through it. And we thought that was just like that level exclusive, like, oh, it's just a weird thing, weird quirk with that level. But I noticed that another level had like a very similar sort of wall. So I started messing around with like corners and figured out a way to clip into it and then zip up it. And that skipped like one of the most RNG levels in the game. So that was already huge. And I don't remember if it was me or Poker who figured out that you could do it on any wall. Like it was based on the camera. So if camera was close enough to Sammy's face, will just push you into the wall. At least that's our theory, is that the camera pushes you. We don't actually know, but yeah, so that helped optimize a bunch of levels. We also figured out, oh god, I'm trying to think of like in order what we figured out next. I'm sure there was like a lot of smaller discoveries between that. But the next big thing was gem clipping. So those colored gems that you like pick up and swap. We knew for a while that sometimes randomly when one is next to a wall and you pick it up, you zip up the wall. But it was like so inconsistent. We just like, yeah, this exists, whatever. There's no way that's ever going to be useful, right? And then someone pressed M a bunch while collecting a gem and just went through a wall. So just like for reference, the run at first with already a couple glitches was like 40 minutes around there. Then when we found camera zipping, I'm not quite sure, but I think it was like 30s, high 20s maybe. Mm-hmm. Then we figured out gem clipping and it was like 15, 14. I think I had the record for that route with like a 14, 20 something. And then I was just messing around with the pause key again. and I threw a bug, one of the like weapons, just held forward and was spamming M, and Sammy went through a door, and I was like, oh, because the main thing limiting us from using gem clips was that not every level had gems.
Had gems, yeah.
Yeah, so we couldn't really use it everywhere. We could use it in a lot of places. That's why the time went down so much, but there was still a bunch of levels that were left unbroken. Or like had really long setups because we had to juggle 2 gems for like half the level to get to the end and then use that. But yeah, like almost every level has bugs to throw. So it's like, oh, hello. And I did it. And then we thought the game was dead because no one else could replicate it. And we had no idea why. And then another runner, Wormy, came in and she was able to do it. So it's like, okay, I'm on a crappy laptop. She's on a crappy laptop. Everyone else is on like proper PCs. And I was thinking to myself, like, I know another speed game where a glitch is only possible on like Intel CPUs, but not on AMD, or the other way around. I don't remember. But
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah,
hardware stuff. So it's like, I have Intel, she has Intel. What do others have? But like that was quickly ruled out. And I don't remember who came up with the idea, but someone went into, I think it was Wormy actually. She got on like a proper PC, and she went into the Windows power plan settings and lowered like the performance that was out, that the computer was allowed to, run at. And she was able to get the clips. So it's like, okay, do that. Enjoy not being able to stream at high quality. So we did that, and everyone was able to do it. So I grinded the game a lot. Like I remember, I think the first stream after that glitch was discovered, I played the game for like 6-7 hours straight, just grinding runs, which was really stupid. And I got burnt out on the game for a while, but eventually came back. And the time got lowered to what it is now, which is like a sub 9 now, sub 9 minutes.
Yeah.
There was some other like more minor glitches found in the meanwhile, but like those were the super major ones.
That's quite. I mean, that's really. When you said that after that first major discovery, that it was like a 40-minute run, I was like, oh my god, because I know from having watched the GDQ run and watching the checking the leaderboard times, is like about 9-10 minute run, and I was like, oh no, what happened here? And it just turns out he kept finding different ways to clip through stuff. Yeah,
huge shout outs to Poker, who was like the first person to do runs, and for like the first couple months he was the only one, because like no one else I don't think was really interested. I was, but the game wasn't broken enough for me, and like some of the levels were genuinely too hard for me. So I think around gem clipping I started getting into it, and pushed it down a bit more, and then like a couple more runners joined as well, because the run was getting easier, more accessible.
Are there any other games like this? Like, did this company make anything else in this neighborhood?
We don't even know who they are, really.
So
the game. Okay, so
go ahead.
Sorry, fun fact about Sammy is it was still being sold until like last year, I think. It was $20. It's $20, and actually someone in the community bought the game for $20. Got the legit copy from like an archive.org link, which we're not sure if the money ever went to the devs, but they did pay. They did. It did take $20.
Who did they pay?
I don't know. Suricate Software, I guess. But like got it, and as it turns out, the game has like a weird registry thing, like to register, not the Windows registry.
Oh, okay.
So to register you have to like give them your full like legal name and stuff, like proper info, and then when you play it actually shows your full name in the corner. So if you ever wanted to stream on a legit copy, you'd dox yourself. So
Good.
yeah, that's fun. That's good.
Yeah, I was trying to do research on this because I was very much curious because one of the other games that we've talked about, Mortyr IV, we might talk about that a little bit more, but I know City Interactive has made a ton of games. They've made a ton of budget first-person shooters and all sorts of things, and so my thought was, well, this is Suricate Software. Did they do other games like this? And I can only assume everything I'm about to say you already know, but looking into it, the developer's name is attached to like a bunch of like jewel matching games on Steam.
Yeah. Like some card game, I think, as well. They did make other games that we did find on like archive.org again off their website. I played a bunch of the demos because those are easy to download just off their site. They're like all not good. It's all like really arcadey sort of. Yeah, I guess arcade games is the best way to describe it. Like there was one where you sort of rotated around like a structure and you shot blocks at it and then you made lines, they disappeared. It wasn't very good.
I could see that.
Yeah, Sammy is the gem, pun intended.
Now, do you expect? I feel like taking a game like Sammy Suricate to GDQ might be the time when the game ascends to speedrun heaven, never to be seen again. Do you or like anyone else have thoughts about where this run goes from here, or is this run sort of now been fully, I guess, shaped into a perfect diamond of a speedrun?
So, I think there's still stuff left to be found. I don't know what it would be, but I would be surprised if there wasn't stuff to be found. It is Sammy, after all. That game is a mess. Maybe we find 1.0 someday, because we're on 1.1 right now.
That was the version that
broken.
That was the version that Albert had found, right? Because what, the 1.1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And actually, the person who bought a legit copy also ordered a German CD copy and then ripped it. And that was like 1.08, I want to say. It wasn't. We didn't find any like glitches for it exclusive to it, and like differences. It was like a gold edition, which had 4 bonus levels. That until now we thought there was only one, like known about. But yeah, we had all 4, and they're terrible, and we don't want to play them, so we don't. And also, the game is in German because that's the disc they got.
Right.
So yeah, we sort of ignored that. But yeah, who knows? Maybe it goes somewhere. We did actually find, like, from the GDQ run, we did get a couple new members in the Sammy Discord, and one of them actually like, did some reverse engineering and actually found like a console and then did a credit swap with a command. So that was pretty funny, but not very useful.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. It's really interesting to me. I think one of the things that's really compelling about speedrunning is when you see a small community coalesce around a sort of almost forgotten game like this, and I feel like a lot of the stories that you just told really highlight that sort of thing, which is neat. I think it's part of what makes it fun and worth doing. Let's get over to Mortyr IV. Now, you already talked about how with Mortyr IV, which again is also Operation Thunderstorm. If you're looking to play this game, you can get this game on Steam. It's called Operation Thunderstorm. And this you talked about routing it and that experience, getting the time down. And I mentioned already that this is a City Interactive game, a budget brand first-person shooter. Did you have anything that you wanted to add when helping people understand what is Mortyr IV, aka Operation Thunderstorm? Like, what is this game?
Think Call of Duty, but on the Fear engine, and like all the cinematic stuff just gone. Yeah, that's maybe like lower the quality a bit, and you got more here.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much about it. So when it comes to this, and I mentioned already, I noticed looking at your speedrun.com profile that you've also done other City Interactive games, whether that be other games in the Mortyr series or just other first-person shooters by that developer. What was your introduction to the universe of City Interactive? Was it specifically the Mortyr series, or was it outside of that?
Well, Mortyr IV specifically was.
Okay, it is Mortyr IV. Okay.
The introduction. So I got that game as a child from like a supermarket or something for like, $2.
Mm-hmm.
And I played it. I don't remember thinking anything about it, but it was just sitting on my shelf for ages. And yeah, like just one day when I decided to try looking into it speed-wise, I was just like, oh yeah, this game exists. I don't remember anything about it. Let's play it. So, the most random possible way to get into a game, I guess. Yeah, so that was my introduction to that, and I played it for a while, just that game. But then I realized, hey, this is really broken. I wonder what else CI put out. So I looked to the other CI game on my shelf, which is SAS Secure Tomorrow. And I do remember replaying that and thinking it was hilarious. It's a really funny game. The voice acting is just like it has 7 or 8 minutes of unskippable cutscenes, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it. It's so funny. So I figured, I already took a bunch of the knowledge from the Fear community and put it on Mortyr. This is the same thing. So I'm just gonna, yep. So I found out that one person actually ran it before me, and they had like a 15-minute run with no glitches, no skips. So just yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Here's a 30-minute run.
Can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that, and I didn't really look into it much more. I did 1 or 2 runs, and just dropped it because it wasn't very interesting. As funny as the cutscenes are, running a 30-minute game where a third of it is cutscenes, not the best experience.
Yeah.
So I dropped it pretty quick.
That'll get old pretty quick for sure once the novelty of it wears off. But still probably a fun, I guess a fun thing to show off for a marathon where bad cutscenes are appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a while later, Mortyr IV was getting some traction, some new runners, and one of them came from Mortyr 1. They ran Mortyr 1 previously, and then they did Mortyr 4, and then they did 3. So I don't quite remember. I think that got me sort of interested in Mortyr 3, but I thought it was kind of boring because it was a different engine.
Right.
I think it's a Chrome engine, which I don't know if it tells you anything. It didn't tell me anything, but basically
I've seen screenshots of that game Chrome. Whenever I search lists of mech games, which is a thing I do from time to time, Moby Games always says, "Here, Chrome, you want to look at this, right?" And I'm like, I don't know what this is. This doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. So that run is significantly less broken, but it sort of made me aware of it. And later down the line, another runner of Mortyr IV, a friend of mine, Toxic, actually started playing and I guess learning Mortyr 3, and I was like, yeah, all right, I'll do this. So I think we found some new skips and stuff. Of course, Toxic in classic Toxic fashion found some really awful skips that only work 600 FPS, and I can't do them. He also found some really weird version, which is half translated in Hungarian, and then the other half they sort of gave up, so it's Russian. It's really good. But yeah, I ran it for a while, he ran it for a while. I don't think either of us really liked it as much as 4, just because of the tech in it. I think also before that, me and some members of the Polish speedrunners community did a race, like blind race Mortyr 1, where the game crashed like 50 times. But I think I ended up winning the race, so that was good. And I never want to touch that game again.
Do you know what engine Mortyr 1 is in? Is it like a build engine or something?
It's like their own engine.
Oh, okay.
Because Mortyr 1 and 2 was not actually made by CI. It was made by Mirage Interactive, Mirage Software, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, they made the first game, which was actually decently popular and well regarded in Poland as like a pretty good game. And then they made Mortyr 2. And then they went bankrupt because it was terrible. So CI got the rights to Mortyr, the IP, and made Mortyr 3, which is also not good. And then ages later, they were making like Jupiter FPSs, and they made Operation Thunderstorm, which was like, oh, we have the IP, the Mortyr IP. We can slap that name onto it and get more sales. So that's the only connection of that game.
Right?
To the,
yeah.
to the
I
main
mean,
series.
like the plot of Mortyr 4 is basically they just picked like 4 famous Nazis, and you go through 3 levels. At the end of every 3rd level, you kill a famous Nazi, and that's kind of the game.
Yep.
Which is not bad. It is quite cathartic, actually. But
so you know, more just for comparison, Mortyr 4, you are a son of a scientist who invented a time machine in the year 2093 that some people used to go back to World War II and make Hitler win. And then you are living in like the alternate future where the Nazis have won. So you go back to 1944 to stop the Nazis from winning. And like halfway through the game, you come back to the future and like do stuff there. It's honestly a cool game. Like it's a cool idea, and it has some fun stuff. It's just really unstable on modern hardware.
Yeah, no, that is
just generally doesn't play very well.
Yeah.
It's one of those games that was like intended to be played at 40 FPS, and any higher just speeds the game up. So you know.
I kind of love like if that works stably, sometimes that can be kind of fun. That's kind of how I feel about like the PC port of True Crime New York City, right? Like it's stable enough, but if of course if it's not stable, then it's not worth it.
Yeah, it's pain.
So, is there any future plans for the universe of Mortyr or City Interactive Games? Because I imagine there's more out. I think like, here's the thing, right? Like. I feel like this could be one of those things, right? Like you discover Mortyr 4. Mortyr 4 had a lot of cool tech, especially being, a Lithtech Jupiter game. You were able to really work it down. I watched your any percent PB, which I think is the world record. Really satisfying run. It's a neat run. Makes use of a lot of different tech. A lot of the same tech. If you watched, for example, if you watched MaxiLibs do Fear at AGDQ 2021, you'll recognize a lot of the tricks. Like the float glitch and stuff like that. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have any plans for exploring other City Interactive games or returning to the Mortyr series?
So, as for Mortyr, I don't really have plans. I would like to maybe eventually come back to any percent because there is one more route for a level that is not implemented yet. Because it was discovered after that run and I never went back to it. City, I honestly don't know what they do. They make like sniper games, I think. I don't really care.
Yeah.
But I did for like a good month or two annoy the City Interactive Twitter account, constantly asking for a new Mortyr game. And one time they replied saying, "You never know." So basically, I'm excited for Mortyr 5. And yeah, if that ever becomes a reality, I feel like I have to
Oh
play
yeah,
it, right?
no. If Monolith ever made Shogo 2, I'm in deep trouble. Like,
Mm,
same thing. Left Tech universe, I guess.
yeah.
Sometimes it's like that. So, all right, let's move on to another game here. You already mentioned this. You already mentioned Yo Noid 2 a little bit in terms of how you discovered Yo Noid 2, the story about the music and learning the game about through that, and how this was a game made in a game jam. So, do you want to talk a bit more about what Yo Noid 2 is?
It's first of all ahead of its time. That is the like line that they used. So like I guess a bit of backstory. The game jam, the game was submitted. The game was submitted to was, I think the theme was X was ahead of its time, if I remember correctly. And the devs were just like, hey, remember that Noid game for the NES? What if we made that, but better? And so they went for like a PS1, PS2 aesthetic, mostly PS1, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it ahead of its time, they let the Noid dab. And if I remember correctly, that is like one of the first features that they implemented. The game has analog dabbing. If you're playing on a controller, you dab with the trigger, and like the more you push it in, the more into the dab the Noid gets. It's incredible. But somehow, despite that being the foundation of the game, they made a really solid platformer. Like, it's the movement mechanics and the level design and stuff is just, it's a lot of fun. Like, both casually and from a speedrun perspective. Like, I don't know what to say. It's just, it's a lot of fun to
Now,
just move the character.
When you discovered the game, there was already people speedrunning it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did the run develop a lot from the time that you picked it up to now, or was it already sort of a fully formed speedrun when you discovered it?
So when I joined the community, I was like, I think half a year or a year late to the game existing. Mm-hmm. So they've already figured out a lot of the routes that were used at that point. And I didn't really contribute to that version of the game much, I don't think. I was, okay, I remember I was the first person to seriously tackle 100%. And I guess I made some developments to that route, but the main category, 90%, I didn't really touch for a while. And when I did, I didn't discover much new. So I guess you could say it was like basically fully developed. But then a year after the game's initial release, devs actually put out Game of a Year edition. Not the year, a year.
A year, yes, that's right.
Yep. In which they added a bunch of stuff, they reworked a bunch of stuff. So they added like a bunch of different characters that had like unique abilities, like a Sonic character, Crust 40, which is a reference to Crash 40. Yeah, so like that guy can run twice as fast. Or like a version of Luigi who jumps really high but is slippery. You know, like Noid Luigi. I think some others, but irrelevant. So like the community was basically like got a new life, excited for the new characters and you know what the route would look like with them. But another thing they did that was really important was they reworked the entire like movement code. So in the legacy version, the first release, you could hold multiple inputs that do the same thing. And it would have like minor effects, like when you're in dialogue, holding jump speeds up the scrolling, but then you have to press it again to sort of advance the dialogue. So what you do is you hold one button and then mash the other, to like I optimally go through dialogue. In Game of a Year, they prevented you from doing that. So they made it so if you're holding one button, the other buttons for that same action don't do anything, which was actually key to the biggest glitch we've found in the game yet, which is text storage. So normally when you're in dialogue, you're locked in place, you can't move.
Mm-hmm.
But it was figured out pretty early on that if you talk to an NPC and then die, you can move around with the dialogue on screen. But as I mentioned earlier, when you jump, you advance dialogue. So you can never carry it very far. And after like a lot of trying from a very dedicated glitch hunter, we actually managed to first off get dialogue out of the level, out of like a level into the hub world. But like sort of the thing we were trying to do is the final level, final boss fight has like a long dialogue that we figured if you could get another NPC's dialogue and then finish it in the level, you could skip the boss's entire dialogue. And we actually brought this theory up to the devs, and they put an NPC in the final arena so you could talk to it, and then they checked if it would skip the dialogue, and it did.
Oh.
So we're like, hey, can you release that version?
Yeah.
And they were like, no.
No.
So, no, of course not. So we didn't get that. So we're trying for a long time to somehow jump all the way to the final area without finishing the dialogue. And one of the runners eventually managed to do it. But it broke the fight. Like, so in the fight, you grab like dice that fall onto the floor, like dominoes dice,
Mm-hmm.
and you spin them around and throw them at the boss. If you did that glitch, the auto aim would never kick in, so it was basically impossible to hit the boss. So that was very sad. But despite that, like, we figured out that in Game of a Year, because of the changes they did to the controller code, like the movement code, you could hold down talk, which also advances dialogue, and then you could jump without advancing it because you were holding a button that is meant for that.
Mm-hmm.
So you could carry text anywhere. And that wasn't very useful for a while, but then we figured out that actually ending dialogue always puts you in a standing state for one frame, no matter where you are, even if you're mid-air. So, first of all, you could double jump because you have a frame where you're on the ground, so you can jump again.
Yeah.
That wasn't very useful though, but we figured something else out, which is when you finish dialogue over some things, you get teleported somewhere else. I had no idea how it worked, but after a while, before we figured out the warps, we figured that if you die and then finish dialogue while you're dead, Noid actually becomes dead alive. And because of how the checkpoint system works in the game, which is just puts the checkpoint wherever you were standing last, being alive there let you set a checkpoint while dead, so you would respawn where you were dead. This makes perfect sense, I promise.
This works, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So that was a route for a while where a place where we used to clip with lag, which the clip was fixed, we could do it again by just abusing dialogue. But yeah, then someone figured out that you can warp with this, and someone else figured out that you can warp from the start of a level to like the middle of it, which was a lot faster. So we did that for a while, which also meant that, half the run you're playing with dialogue covering half of your screen. So the run got a lot harder. Eventually, I actually got a friend who's like more knowledgeable I cannot speak, I'm sorry, more knowledgeable about coding to look into the game's code, and they actually found out why it works. So there's a mechanic that sort of keeps track of where you are on a level, and it keeps track of that by checking which like part of the geometry you're on and what like your vector from the center of that thing is, and that's how it like sets checkpoints and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it only updates your position when you're standing on it, but it updates like the object it's supposed to be calculating off when you're above it. So usually it doesn't matter because like it puts you in the coordinates you're supposed to be when you get clamped, which is what it's called, which is basically standing, mm-hmm. not being in a jump, but standing. So that usually works fine, but we can stand in midair for a frame. So we basically transfer the vector from one object, from the center of one object to another object. So let's say the whole map is one object, right? It's like the ground. It's just an object. And then there's another object that's like the door to another part of the level. So you can stand on the level, which is like a big vector, right? Because the level is huge, the center is very far away. And then you can jump over the door, which is a small thing with a center very close to you. And then you finish dialogue. So it applies the vector from the whole level to the center of the door. So you just get teleported way out. And so we figured out a couple warps with that. One was dominant in the route, called the core warp.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just warped into the core of a level, like skipping half of it. So that's where the route was for a while. But then one of the runners figured out that for some reason, like the pizza box that you use to enter a level, the center actually has a direction, and if you open it, it has a different direction than if it's closed. And they managed to warp into the final area of the game right away. So the game just got cut in half, basically. And you said to keep it PG, so I'm not gonna say the name of the trick. But let's say we had a stupid inside joke because we thought the game was solved, right? Like we thought we found all the warps, we knew how they worked. It's done. So we're expecting maybe to find like a half a second optimization. So we just joke like, oh, let's call it that, whatever we find next. Wait. And then the major glitch that skipped half the game was found next. So we had to retroactively apply the acronym, the like long of it. Okay. Convoluted upward method.
Yeah, convoluted upward method. What's the acronym for that? I don't know. I have no idea.
I couldn't tell you. I cannot speak English. I don't know.
Well, we'll never know.
So that's the any person route. Is just go get the dialogue, leave the level, do the convoluted upward method, finish the game. And the run sucks to grind out because it's just like you don't do any of the fun content of the game. But it's a really cool route, I think. And it really shows that the version we at first thought was like inferior because it was just more annoying to run, actually became like minutes faster. It's really cool.
One of the things I noticed looking over the leaderboard for this game, and I think your history of some of these discoveries has already shown that there's a lot of categories, right? Like I think the run I had watched was an all stages run from Frost Fatales. You were talking about sort of the evolution of any percent, use of things like core warp. There is such an interest in this game that this is actually a game that has a category extensions leaderboard. you know,
Yeah.
there's a not sufficient interest. Do you have any sort of favorite category that you would want to mention from either the main leaderboard or the category extensions leaderboard?
So, I guess as for like the coolest runs, it's Game of the Year, all stages and no major skips. They're just really fun runs. They're like really cool. They have a bunch of tech that is like just fun to watch, fun to do. As for the category extensions, I mean, as much as I hate the name, we do have dab percent where you have to keep dabbing.
I didn't see a run of yours on that leaderboard. I wasn't sure.
I wonder why.
Why is that? It's
that category is actually really hard because when you are dabbing, you cannot grab ledges, or you can, but you can only hold on to them for 1 frame. So every ledge grab, which there is a bunch of required ones in the game, you have 1 frame to jump out of. So, yeah, that's fun. There's an all badges category where you do 100% with all 5 characters, and it takes like 2 hours. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's like every category has something going for it, I think. Like, they're all cool in their own right.
Okay, and I brought up the Frost Fatales 2020 recording, and I had a question about that recording. At the end of the VOD, you just let the ending start playing. Did you warn them about it? Because they didn't seem ready to get off it.
No.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, the ending, so I guess they had some live action work done for this game, and the ending is kind of creepy. It's the guy dressed up as this Noid character standing in a pool, and some people are like waving their hands toward him like they're worshiping him or something. It's got a real creepy vibe, weird aesthetic. And I could even tell they were sort of alarmed in the studio. And so you already answered that it was. Did anyone say anything like rythin, please? Why?
No
one said anything.
No one from the staff said anything. The chat was like monkeys. So actually, fun thing about that is I had a character bid war, and vocal Noid, which is Hatsune Miku, but the Noid, won the bid war, and that is the only character that ending appears on, because that's the final character, and that's the secret true ending.
Oh, okay.
I was actually quite upset that he didn't let it play out fully.
I was wondering, because sometimes at these events, GDQ knows, and they'll let an ending play out because it's funny or interesting or whatever. It certainly happens. And so I was really surprised because I was like, oh, they're doing this. Like, they're committing to the bit. And then it just cuts out at some point, and I was like, oh no,
yeah.
They didn't know.
Oh no. Yeah.
So do you have any future plans for this game right now in terms of, improving other categories or anything like that?
Currently, no.
Okay.
I wanted to go for a sweep in the legacy boards, the legacy game, and I did get most of them. I think I'm missing one. I just don't feel like playing. Yeah.
That's fair. All right, let's move on.
Maybe one day I'll come back.
Yeah. Let's move on to the last main game here, which you've already mentioned, which is Kao. I keep seeing the word, and I want to say Kao, and then I immediately realize, of course, it's supposed to be Kao because it's a kangaroo with boxing gloves.
Yeah.
Kao the Kangaroo 2, specifically, which you mentioned as being a game that was a big success in Poland, but not one that you had played at the time. How did you end? I forget. How did you? Because you came to this by way of another Kao the Kangaroo game, right?
Mm-hmm. So I never played Kao 2 as a kid, but I did play Kao 3, which was not a success anywhere, actually. That game was rushed to completion because the story is basically they were making the game and it was going fine, and then the publisher was like, hey, actually, console shooters are more popular, so we're just gonna cut your funding and you feel free to release what you have. We don't care. So in the final level, you can actually see where the game was meant to go, where the level was meant to go, and then it's a dead end. And if you go back, there's just a door to the end of the game. So, yeah, it's a sad story, but I did have nostalgia for the game. I did play it a lot as a kid, so I figured, hey, why not speedrun it? And it was actually like the first two. So the 80% of the game is 8 minutes long because due to the lack of funding, they never like got to properly test the game and like fix it up. So there's just a hole in the hub that you can jump through and hit the loading trigger to the final area of the game. So like that was the only run people did for ages. And then I came in and it's like, okay, but this is lame. I want to actually play the game. So I came up with a category called all artifacts, which basically means you have to do the major levels of the game before finishing it. And I ran that for a while. And it was fun. It was a fun run. It's pretty cool. For a complete newcomer to the series, speedrun wise. Mm-hmm. It had like a decent amount of tech and platforming and stuff. So I did that for a while. And then I eventually ended up stacking the any% record as well. Ended up converting the leaderboards to the almighty loadless timing. Yeah, so that was good while. And then for some reason I played KO2 and then learned that run. And now I cannot come back to 3. The movement in KO2 is just so much better.
But I noticed too, one of the other things I discovered when I was looking around is that you are one of 2 individuals who has trilogy runs on the Kao the Kangaroo multi-runs board, and then pretty recently too. I think I saw your PB is only a month ago. At what point did you decide that you wanted? Because I know you had mentioned, I guess it was KO3, but I guess once you got into KO2 and discovered that you liked it as a speedrun, was that the point when you're like, well, I guess a trilogy run's going to happen?
Yeah, that was basically it. Like, I got a decent time in KO2, and like talk of a trilogy run has been going around Discord for ages before I joined, but no one really cared because everyone just runs KO2. So I was pretty good at KO3, and I was getting decent at KO2. So I was like, I mean, it only makes sense, right? For some reason, at that time, I was also like really into multi-runs, like full series and stuff. So it was just like a formality, basically, learn KO1, do a trilogy. And now I never want to come back to trilogy because of KO1. Because it's... Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. But yeah, I sort of set off with a goal of... I saw, KO2 is an hour long. KO1 should be like a mid-30. But I'm bad, so I'm just going to count 40 minutes. And then KO3 is like 10 minutes at most. So I want a sub 2. Like, I want to complete this. Say I completed the series in under 2 hours. And so I did one run. And I did just that. So, that was nice.
Cool. I was gonna say, it seems like you're probably at this point. I think you already answered my sort of wrap up question, which was future plans for KO. And of course, you mentioned that really you would like to see that show up at like an AGDQ or other type of event, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that, and I mean, for reference, KO3 was released in I think 2005. Mm-hmm. I will double check. Yeah, 2005. KO4 is coming out this year.
KO4. Oh, okay. Well, that's all right. KO4. Let's go.
Yeah, that was like crazy news at the time. That they're making a new KO. It's actually coming back. That's insane. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Just like routing and running. I'm definitely like getting it on day one. Mm-hmm. And gonna be early on running it.
No, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's
Excited
kind
for
of a fun note. It's interesting to see some of these, the different franchises and things to come back like that. All right, I'm going to start wrapping up the formal part of the podcast here. I got some exit questions. One of those is that I'd like to add a little connective tissue between the interviews in the interview series. My previous guest, Jay Hobbs, had this question to give to the next guest, which is, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to your past self that is just starting speedrunning?
Oh man. There's actually there's two ways I could go about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if we were going to just starting out back in 2013, I would tell myself to practice my games. Don't just do runs, don't just do no resets. They're fun. It's fun to just play the game and finish it. But at one point, you will become more competitive and you will want better times. Get in the habit of practicing. Just go over smaller segments, do things you're bad at, and improve better. Because I still to this day struggle with practicing and having a proper routine for it.
No, that's a really good answer. That's good for everything, That's good for music, gaming, anything.
True.
Good practice helps so much. Now, did you say you had another piece of advice, or was that sort of the...
I guess if we were going to a bit later me, I for a good couple of years, I was super zen about runs. I never got annoyed. I just played the game, took any time else I did, whatever, just flow over me. And I guess I would tell myself to keep that attitude, try to actively think of keeping that attitude, because I just lost it somewhere along the way, and it annoys me that I get angry at video games. It's why?
Yeah, why?
Yeah.
All right, those are pretty good answers. So that does mean that I do need from you a question to hand off to my next guest, who is a speedrunner. But the question doesn't have to be about speedrunning. It could be about anything, but it's a question that I will have to ask to my next guest about a week from now. Can be, again, fun or as serious as you like. Do you have any thoughts for that?
Right. So, as a long-time listener to OverBoost, I do actually have one prepared.
Okay. All right.
Which is, maybe it's kind of cheating, but you know what? I'm a speedrunner. I can cheat. So this is assuming the next person has run multiple games, more than one, right?
Okay. That works.
So if you could take one level from one of your speed games and replace another one in another speed game, what would you swap? Take out the one boring level in your speed game and replace it with another one from another fun one.
Okay, so you're removing one level from one of your speed games, and you are replacing it with a level from another speed game.
Right. Okay. It doesn't have to be a level, a split, a segment, whatever. Okay. Just what would you swap?
No, that's a pretty good one. I will, as is my tradition, give the spoiler here to you in the DM. So yeah, your question will work. That question will work.
That'll work.
So, I'll of course be announcing that soon. Look forward to that. That'll be a fun interview next week. Now you already mentioned Kao 4 is happening. Are there any other games coming up that you are interested and excited about?
I guess maybe not excited, but I am sort of looking at Lords of the Fallen 2. That is a game that CI published, and I don't remember if they developed it. They definitely published. They might be developing the second one. I don't really know. I just heard that it might be happening. I'm sort of gonna look at it. I might not get super involved, but
yeah.
So yeah.
Is there a speedrun scene for the first one, or?
It's very tiny, but there is one.
Okay.
it's not really active at all. Yeah.
No, that's fair. But I mean, KO4, right? We'll keep an eye on
Yeah,
KO4.
KO4. Absolutely.
If you could highlight one person in the speedrun community that you feel like more people should be watching, should be more eyeballs on this person, who would that be?
Oh man. See, the thing is, I don't. A lot of the people I know don't really like stream much, so I guess eyeballs doesn't really, work too well. But one person that I do think deserves more recognition is Havard. He's a fellow glitch hunter. He broke like all of the Bethesda Fallouts and Skyrim and Oblivion. Like he does great work with that and a bunch of other games. Like, yeah, he's just a really good glitch hunter that definitely deserves more recognition.
No, Havard is really good. I definitely second that one. If people are looking for you and what you're doing, where should they be looking?
I'm on Twitch with streaming like once a month, if you're lucky. I upload like a bunch of glitches I find and other runs on YouTube if you care at all. I'm mostly on Twitter, so like that's the main place to, I guess, find me.
Yeah, and of course, if you're listening to this after the fact, all of those links will be in the description, whether that is YouTube description or in Spotify, iTunes, whatever. If you're watching live right now, I just dumped all the links into chat, and you can also fetch them by typing !guest. rythin, thank you so much for giving me all this time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
But
it's very fun.
You are a long-time listener, so you do know.
Yeah,
I'm gonna need from you a rocket engine noise after I say the catchphrase. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Let's boost on out of here.
I tried.
That was good. No, that was good. I like that. That worked. Discord liked that too. It didn't even cut off at all. I'm still trying to figure out what Discord likes and doesn't like, but the answer is Discord liked that rocket engine noise. Folks, so we got some time for some live Q&A. Just go ahead and if you do have questions, please start dumping them into chat. I have a question. Is there an origin story to the seal? Is that a long-time friend or is that a recent friend?
I mean, it's been around for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
I like plushies and I had it, so I put it on at some marathon. Like people noticed and thought it was cute, so I just started doing it.
I'm getting the sense that Noid here might be involved in the Noid 2 speedrunning, among other things, from watching the chat.
A little bit.
They're requesting a live comprehensive doc of the Portal 3D speedrunning. Are there other Portal games that aren't 3D? I guess there's that Narbacular Drop or whatever.
There's a game called Portal 3D. Which
there's a game called
maker
Portal.
Game.
Okay.
That never got released, got like deleted off the internet. But for some reason, Stu found it years ago, downloaded it, and thought it was terrible. But like years later, for some reason remembered it, went to like find a really old hard drive, plugged it into their PC, and like they found it. There was the game. So me and them played it, and it was not very good. The portal gun in Portal 3D didn't work. The blue portal, if you went into it, just shot you up into the air, and you were stuck. You can jump infinitely. You can fly. The orange portal just disables that wall's collision, so you can just walk through walls. So yeah, we ran it for like a month. Somehow it got approved on speedrun.com, and then I made one of the actual Portal game mods a moderator for that, and they added Gonzo to the leaderboard, which was a nice touch. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Good. No, that's those are all good things. Everything about that Lost Game Maker game, the disables collision. I love all of these things. Kodzik has a question, which is, why do you wrongly? I sense some bias in this question. Why do you wrongly believe that percentage shouldn't be added at the end of category names?
Because it looks stupid. I'm keeping it PG, but it looks very stupid.
But isn't it an effective shorthand that people know it's a speedrun category?
Yeah, when I say, no major skips speedrun in time, and have, the time in the video title, people won't know it's a speedrun unless they put % after the name of the category. You're right. But no, like as a serious response, % means the percentage of the game completed. So any %, just beat the game with any completion. 100% do everything, low % do as little as possible. No major skips isn't a percentage. Glitchless isn't a percentage of the completion. It's just an additional restriction.
But would something like any % glitchless, that would be okay. But you don't want to call it glitchless %.
Okay. Yeah. So actually I have like a whole sort of rule set for naming categories. So to me, any % is implied unless otherwise specified. So any % glitchless, just glitchless, not any % glitchless, because adding the any % there is just unnecessary, because it's implied in glitchless. Unless you are doing like 100% glitchless, where including the 100% is necessary. So I guess that's my whole take on the.
Now, I already did this to you while we were warming up. Make here though is bringing it back up, which is RTA versus IGT discussion. Do you have any points? Would you like to respond to Make trying to provoke you here?
So I guess I can give a serious answer.
Yeah.
This time. I do actually like real time, believe it or not. And I do like using it where possible. But there's just, if a game has obvious loading screens that take varying amounts of time, then there's no excuse to be using real time instead of real time without loads. Which, by the way, that's a different thing. Loadless and IGT.
Yeah, they are different.
Completely different things.
I try to be good about saying without loads versus saying IGT. Yeah. That's like one of the more annoying things to me is when people get this wrong. But I think IGT is a timing method I like the least, just because of there's a lot of like inconsistencies with it that often pop up, like in Dark Souls, which is a game that's timed by in-game time. If you quit out, you can just stay on the menu and the timer never moves. So you can just go, like, I don't know, take a bath, come back, and lose no time to the run. And I don't like that. I don't like breaks like that. The Dark Souls community actually has a rule which says that if you quit out, you have to go back into the game right away, or your run will be rejected. But that has another issue where what break is too long? Can I stretch my wrists in the quit out? It takes like 2 seconds. Is that too long? One moderator will say it's fine, the other will reject my run. So it adds like a lot of complications in places where they don't need to exist, because we could just be using time without loads. No, I mean, that's those are some pretty good answers. I feel like, yeah, especially making the effort when discussing this to put without loads and IGT in different places is definitely important, because I feel like, you know, IGT, I mean, right off from the bat, we can talk about how weird in-game timers can be. But like even beyond that, you know, you get into discussions of, especially I feel like because I tend to do some open world games, you get into discussions of you kind of adding loads by doing more fast travel or something like that, right? Where you put yourself in a situation where, you know, if you manage to pause the clock by spending more time doing loads or something, does that create some sort of risk? And of course, it's such a corner case, really, you know, often. But,
yes, I mean checkpoint reloads, right? It's like the sort of the very thing you're mentioning is like, you know, checkpoint reload sits through 20 seconds of loading to skip 3 seconds of dialogue.
Right.
And there's a case to be made for that being not fun. And like, I did have a thought that maybe instead of pausing the timer on loads, we should be adding a set amount of time per load. Like every load you go through is 10 seconds.
Yeah.
No matter your hardware. But that runs into another issue, like if someone has really fast loads, they're going to have loadless time longer than real time, and that just looks stupid.
Yeah.
So that's not really the solution always. It's a weird thing, but I don't think it's as big of an issue as some people make it out to be. Like having strats that are all only like applicable to loadless. I think that's fine. I think when you're choosing to have fair competition, you're accepting that you're going to be optimizing for that timing method, and that's just how it goes.
That's just how it is, yeah. And I mean, that's one of the other things too, I think, is that the ultimate decider is what people want to do. You know, like if it's truly awful to do the checkpoint strats and you're adding minutes by reloading checkpoints to skip dialogue, I mean, chances are the community will probably then agree to maybe time it differently, you know, just as you said, right? That's one of the things with speedrunning is that you can arrive at a case-by-case solution because you're already spending that time learning the game. Like, it's not going to be that much more to, you know, to make some sort of community decision.
Yeah, for sure.
Kodsik has another question here. What is the marathon run you are the most proud of? Not even terms of like, you know, success and popularity, but just like you feel like you did a great marathon showing, you know, performance of run, commentary, etc.
Good thing I have a spreadsheet of all my marathon runs. But I guess the easy answer while I check this is the Sammy run, both at Fleet Fatales and at AGDQ. AGDQ less so because OBS just died in the middle of it. Like, it wasn't even my internet.
It wasn't me. I only crashed the marathon 3 times, and it wasn't yours.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows, but that was like really irritating for me because I was really hoping to get like a really good showing, and that just, you know, kind of ruined it in my eyes. But the run still went well despite that, and the one at Fleet Fatales was, I'd say, of similar quality. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with those. There's a couple in from the Polish marathon GSPS. There was, at the most recent one, I did a run of KO2 that I was pretty proud of. I thought that went really well. I think I PB'd actually in it.
Ooh,
it was just a really solid run.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was happy with that.
No, that's I think it's good too that you have is GSPS, is that an event series that's done in person, or is that all online?
It was in person until
okay,
COVID. Yeah.
Neat. No, that's great. Honestly, like we all think about like GDQ and ESA as being these big opportunities to see other people in person in a non-pandemic world. But I love hearing about more, either regional, local, in-person speedrunning events. I know I have a series in my area that I'm really fond of, and it's cool to hear about others.
Yeah, for sure. Like, GSPS was definitely the thing that sort of convinced me that, hey, this thing is really fun, going, like, meeting other speedrunners and chilling for a couple days. Because I really was like on the fence about going to ESAs and GDQs beforehand, and like, yeah, going to that one, which is like really low commitment because it's in the country. It's way cheaper than going to even to ESA, and especially because like I joined the marathon pretty early on. I think in the second year of them doing it. So that was still hosted like Poker's house. We just slept in his house, so that wasn't like a thing to worry about with costs and stuff.
Right, yeah. Lodging costs especially.
It was
can be
really.
I was going to say,
really,
lodging
like,
costs in particular can be prohibitive, when it comes to traveling. All right, Stu's got another question here, which I think I know what this is referring to. The question is, any thoughts on forcing webcam in some online marathons? And just to give some context to that for people who maybe don't submit to marathons, I think presently for online events, like GDQ allows use but does not require webcams, and I think it's been a source of some unhappiness that ESA at some point I think began requiring webcams from runners. I don't want to say that with 100% confidence. I think that's the case. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I'm pretty sure that was a thing from the first online ESA.
Okay.
Is that they required webcams. I don't like it. I mean, no one does. I don't think they should be required. Yeah, it's just really arbitrary. I mean, I could go on and on why I don't really like what ESA does. I love going to the events and meeting people and stuff, but from like the, I guess, business stream side, I don't agree with a lot of the decisions they make. Yeah, and that's obviously one of them.
That's one of them. Yeah.
I
didn't realize that. So Stu's mentioning in chat there that even the Break the Record live events, which as a premise, I think it's a cool new variation on doing a speedrun event. But it comes with some qualifiers, which apparently is requiring the participants, for example, to use camera like this.
Yeah. So I don't like BTRL really. I like the idea. I don't like how it's done.
Yeah. I
would be so for it as an event if it didn't have money prizes. But that's like the thing that breaks it for me.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, like I know before Spelunky 2, was it Dark Souls or was it one between those two?
I thought, was the first one SM64 and then they did Dark Souls Remastered?
They did SM64, then they did some Sonic game.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And then I think they did Dark Souls.
Okay.
But yeah, like in the community, there was a debate, should we do Dark Souls 1? Should we do Dark Souls 3? Because they're both popular. And I'm pretty sure one of the main reasons OIDS3 didn't get picked was because the majority of that community does like no webcam, no mic streams. Like they play the game. They're not really streamers, and they don't.
Right.
Yeah, like if you're not comfortable showing your voice, there's no way you're gonna show your face, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's a stupid requirement, I think, and it really limits the pool of possible participants.
Yeah. No, obviously I'm not running an event, but I certainly, if the scope of things is to emphasize the high level, right? Break the record live. I think if you're placing unnecessary restrictions, you might be hurting your sales pitch. And I think that's kind of getting at what you were just laying down there. They also did, that's a Doom after SM64. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Of course, I want more speedrunning events, so, to me, all this criticism is constructive. It's from a place of, we want to see more stuff like this and, see it improve. Well, let me ask a selfish question here as we're closing down on the 2 hours here. Do you have any people, as a listener of OverBoost, that you would like to see interviewed? Make my work easier.
Well, I did mention Harvard. I would love to hear more from him. There's a lot of like smaller communities that have cool people that I think would be cool to interview. Ones that come to mind right now is the Risk of Rain speedrunning community. Has two like old runners who are still active. That would be Topaz and Uzi School.
Mm-hmm.
They are both super interesting guys that, like, I only got to know them like a couple of years ago when I got into Risk of Rain 1 speedrunning. They've been around the community for forever. And, like, you know, even though you're in the same community and you run the same games and stuff, you don't really talk that much about, like, you know, oh, what was the community like back then? What do you think about speedrunning in general? Stuff like that. So, yeah, that would be cool. I think that would be interesting.
No, definitely. I think any of these long running communities, I think, usually have this kind of stuff, right? Like we got a bunch of snapshots of that with, you know, with KO, with Sammy, with Mortyr. No, so I think that's absolutely true. That's part of why I like to do this, and part of why I try to make an effort to get a cross section of people, because not that the big games don't have interesting stories, because they do, but you know, there are also interesting stories out here, and I feel like, you know, want to put more spotlights on them.
The thing with big games is they have interesting stories, but everyone already knows them because they're big games, they're popular, and they're interesting. While they're obscure, like lesser known stuff, you don't know things because no one talks about them. Yeah.
Cool. No, were there any other communities that you wanted? Because I know you mentioned Risk of Rain, you mentioned the two runners for that.
There is a community I'm like, that is sort of new. It's the Minecraft Dungeons, if you've heard of that.
Yeah, that was there was a run of that at AGDQ, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like right afterwards, we cut 80% in half, so that was fun. Yeah. But there's some really cool runners in that community. The runner who actually did the run, Mifa, and the two commenters, Yom Cool and Foot Cream, are all like really interesting people. Especially because I think Foot Cream is relatively new to speedrunning. I think he did actually start out with dungeons. Actually, no, he was a world champion in pencil sharpening simulator, the IRL categories. But yeah, like he started, I think, running video games with dungeons. And like, I guess I'm kind of curious what it's like. You know, I haven't started speedrunning in 8 years, so it's always an interesting thing. Like, you know, where you get to know about it and what motivated you to start with the game you did and stuff.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's part of it too, right? Is that a lot of times when I ask that question, right, it'll be like, I watched a GDQ and then I got into it, but it's not always like that. You know, it's sometimes the answer is a little weirder than that, but usually in a good way. It's like me and my friends did time trials on a Sonic game or something, you know, something like that. All right, well, I think we are about right. Folks, this is your last minute. If you do not get the question now, rythin will never answer another question anywhere, ever.
It's true. I definitely don't be active on Twitter ever.
Yeah. Do not at rythin with any horribly mangled leaderboards. That would be please. Rude.
I still have like 3 folders of screenshots of bad leaderboards. It's not good.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about Gundam. I wonder if that's still away. I'm gonna go check right now.
Oh god,
I think it was Gundam Crossfire. I want to say. Oh god, I just brought up speedrun.com and I saw my own face. That's.
Oh no.
I know, it's terrifying. Yeah, okay, it's still good. It's still there, folks. If you want to see the best leaderboard, please enjoy this one, which is a true sin. I don't know. Maybe that moderator sees me putting them on blast and will hopefully forgive me for doing that. But
you should interview them.
Yeah, no, maybe I should. I wonder if they run other things. Wait a second. While I'm putting someone on blast. No, they only run Crossfire. All right. Why are there periods in some of the category names? Well, actually, let me shove up my glasses here. Sarah, that is the Earth. Well, actually, what is the other? Is it Earth Federation Force? I think. If
Air
watch
Defense
watch
Force?
watch Gundam. Yes. Oh, I wish it was Earth Defense Force EDF. That would be that would, that would be a little But no, it's a reference to the old Gundam show. It's just the Xeon versus the Earth Federation Force. I don't know. One of those. But I think we are about good for the 2 hours then.